First of all, thank you once again, Chancellor, for the opportunity to speak here. So, your question, if we are all more inclined to work with like-minded countries, how do you work with so many more? I think if you like the world, you have more like-minded countries. So we like the world. We look at different parts of the world, and I think the natural instinct for us is to find something common there. So there would be parts of the world where, and each one is one facet of our personality or our character. So there would be countries, let us say, where being a democracy, being a market economy would be a connection. There would be countries where in a post-colonial world, having gone through a colonial experience, let us say with a large part of the global south, would be a connection. There would be countries where there might be something in our history. You can apply this to regions, let us say in Central Asia or the Gulf. There would be cases where we actually might, over a period of time, we have built habits of cooperation because our interests have harmonized over a period of time. So think of it in a way like a person, a country like a person. If you want to have the optimal existence, you want to be on good terms with as many countries. Ideally, they say the best diplomacy is a zero problem situation. Now in real life, nobody gets a zero problem outcome. But if you can minimize the number of problems, you can find more and more points of commonality with countries. And if you take very, I would say, measured and balanced positions, then what you do is you can make your position known, but in a way in which you have also kept further options open. So it's you can say it's a kind of an attitude or a way of doing things. So my Prime Minister today, he tells us, our objective is to have us as we have a term in our own language called Vishwamitra, being a friend of the world. Make as many relationships and even friendships as possible. In real life it works, let me tell you.
You talked about the importance of maritime security in the Indo-Pacific. As you just said, as the trading country, Korea has lots of stake in securing the maritime security and then SLUC. Korea is increasingly committing itself to contributing more to the maritime security in the whole region. But as you have said that, is there any part that you wanted to expect that the Korea play some more role in terms of the Indo-Pacific Ocean Initiative or the general maritime security issues?
I would put it this way. I would certainly flag, which I did today and which I'll be doing again tomorrow with my counterpart, why it would be useful for India and Korea to cooperate more closely in maritime security, both bilaterally as well as in some agreed formats. And I'll give you an example. Today we have a threat to shipping in the Red Sea and in the Gulf of Aden. Okay, my country has deployed 12 warships in that region. We've been very active in providing cover and courage to shipping there. We've had cases where ships have been taken over by pirates and the Indian Navy has boarded it and rescued it in a way. Or ships have been hit, tankers have been hit by missiles or drones, and in some cases, our people have actually gone and put out fires, brought the ship to port. Now, this is possible because while we have our 12 ships, there are many other navies operating there. Okay. And we have a mechanism today for a kind of a coordination so that people not just don't get in each other's way, but they can optimize the result, because the problem we face is a common problem. So my case would be to our Korean partners that getting into arrangements where there's a common picture, where, because none of us will have the resources to actually ensure security and safety beyond a point. We are all going to be able to take one piece of the problem, one situation, one set of concerns and address it. If we want the entire region, the Indo-Pacific, all the way from your shores to our shores and beyond to be safe, then we are better off pooling and working together. Now, two proposals here which might be of interest, I think, to our Korean partners. One is we actually operate a fusion center outside Delhi, where a number of countries have deputed officers. Information from white shipping agreements from a large number of countries come in. These are integrated in a common operating picture, and everybody gets the benefit of it. Now, we today get a similar benefit from something like that in Bahrain, where we have deputed an officer. A second example I gave was this initiative we had called the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, because there are different aspects to the ocean that we need to be careful about. There is a problem of IUU fishing, there's environmental issues, there's plastics, there are transportation connectivity issues. Now, this Oceans Initiative, we tabled it 4 or 5 years ago at the EAS Summit. It actually involves 8 different streams. We've requested countries, could be members of EAS, could be outside, saying, please take the lead and, let's share best practices, let us find ways of understanding each other's concerns. Because what has happened is, the era when there was some master organization in the world and we all plugged in and said, here are my concerns, please give me solution, that's over. We need more self-help groups in a way. The self-help groups won't be universal. So that's where the like-minded comes in. Here, certainly for us to India and ROK to work together in more such formats. I mean, even our relationship will get the benefit of working together. So whenever I've looked at a group of which we've been a member, I can tell you our bilateral relationship has improved, also as a result of being a member of that group.
Wonderful. In that regard, I fully agree with you about your point that ultimately human resources are very much important in enhancing all the collaborative projects between us. And when you talk about the human resources in 2 countries, we have excellent people. When I was studying in the United States, all the very good students in the medical school, and mathematics and chemical engineering were Indian students. And the Koreans are doing very well. So and then you talk about the human resources and mobility program. Do you have any specific sector you have in mind? Well, of course, we have to increase all the sectors. But for example, when you talk about the human exchange between Korea and the United States, why don't you focus on the STEM, the science and technology, engineering, and mathematics? So that's the kind of priority than other areas. So when you talk about human resources exchange and then the mobility program between India and South Korea, do you have some sector in mind, or is it general practice?
No. I mean, let's look at today factors of production. What can slow down growth? What can hamper technology development? Definitely, human resources is one factor. And the reason for it is very simple. It is that global demographics is very uneven. Now, I think different societies and economies are going through their particular versions of it. And the paradox is that with prosperity, naturally the demographic challenges grow. I mean, this happens to all of us. It's beginning in some ways to also express itself in India. Now, when I look around the world, this is sort of not so much a Korean point as a global point. There are three broad categories where we see demand. One, at the highest level, if you look at talent, the skills, the STEM, and a country which has benefited perhaps most of all in this regard is the U.S. That the U.S. Through the H-1 visa scheme actually was able to get a lot of STEM talent from many countries, but most of all from India. And this has been very, very critical to the competitiveness and to the technological advancement of the United States. Now, this was more an American issue, but is now becoming more a global issue. I see in Europe today that the same STEM demand, which was so strong in the US, is now growing in Europe. So, in the last year, we have actually concluded a lot of mobility agreements with countries like Germany, Austria, Italy, Portugal, France, UK, mainly because of that I would say demand-supply gap there. A second is in the service sector. That there are many services today which require at the end of the day, human interventions. And the trained personnel are simply not there. This is particularly true of the medical and healthcare field. A third is actually the blue collar segment. That there are many industries, construction. We've just concluded an agreement with Malaysia, which is largely focused on the construction industry in Malaysia. And again, if one looks at the Gulf, you can see category 2 and category 3. But now increasingly, as the Gulf is looking at non-fossil alternatives, even category 1, that these are there in very, very large numbers. So in India, in a way, we are today preparing our own people for the global workplace. When COVID happened, it was actually, even for us, surprising. It was a discovery of how many Indians were living and working abroad, because in many cases we had to bring them back. Even I would say within probably the first year, we brought back, I think, more than 7 million people who were living and working abroad at that time. The idea that today employment is essentially within your national boundaries. I think as technology changes, as this demand supply, the demographic technology mismatch is there. If we are to find a collective solution, my sense is mobility agreements are a very important answer to that.
Thank you. I cannot monopolize Minister Jaishankar, so I will open the floor. Even though time is limited, I can collect a couple of questions and then, I will give a chance to the junior diplomats first, because as a Chancellor of the Academy, I wanted to give the privilege of asking the question first to the junior diplomats. Okay, Tabin, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Foreign Minister, for the great insights shared today. I feel very honored to be here. My name is Davin Choi, a diplomatic candidate in Korean National Diplomatic Academy. So I have one question to ask. In the current era where economic security is important, What do you think is the key economic security issue that India and Korea should prioritize for cooperation in areas such as global supply chains, digital economy, or advanced technology? And furthermore, who do you think are the countries beyond India and Korea that we should collaborate together in that area? Thank you.
If you don't mind, let me collect a few questions. Who else? All right. Okay, Hyunjin, you have a question?
Thank you. My name is Hyunjin Kim. I am a diplomatic candidate in the Korean National Diplomatic Academy. I appreciate your insightful lecture, Mr. External Affairs Minister. I have a question regarding India's foreign policy. You mentioned once that India's foreign policy is a delicate act of keeping multiple balls in the air without letting any of them drop. This seems to be an excellent metaphor for India's approach to issue-based alliance in diplomacy. Given the current global uncertainties with challenges like COVID-19 and various disputes, do you believe India should continue its traditional approach of loose alliance in diplomacy, or do you think India should strive to form strong alliance to enhance its international standing? Thank you.
Okay, let me give final chance to Professor Han, who contributed a lot to the betterment of the relationship between Korea and India. So I cannot, please.
Minister Jaishankar, it's really a great pleasure to meet you personally. I have been involved chairing the Korea-India Strategic Dialogue from 2010 through 2021 until Foreign Minister Yoon Jong-un take over. I have the three specific questions. First, just one. Well, okay, you emphasize the strategic importance of the supply chain diversity, and I understand that in 2022, India, Australia, Japan worked out a supply chain resilience initiative. My question is that Korea is also very much eager to diversify our supply chain network. So I think Korea is perfect candidate to join, the initiative. Or can Korea join that initiative? If so, under what conditions? Okay. And just one more question. Micron technology received half of the incentive from the Indian federal and the state government, amounting, I think, to 70% of total investment cost. My question is that if Samsung or SK are interested in investing in India in semiconductor area, can both companies receive the similar incentive as the Indian government provided to Micron technology?
Just for curiosity, what was your third question? Okay. In a way, I think the first question and this question have something in common. What do we really need for economic security? I think it depends on the country. It depends on the situation. I want you to think back of the COVID period. Okay. What did the COVID period teach all of us? It taught us that health can become the most important factor in our lives. And if we did not have resources which we could access at a time of difficulty, as a society, as a country, we were in very deep trouble. So, if you had asked me this question in 2020 or 21, maybe even 22, I would have said health is the answer. Okay. But at that time, in India, we did a complete lockdown because we didn't have the health preparedness to deal with the pandemic. So what we did was we did a lockdown and we very rapidly sought to scale up our preparations. Now, when we did our lockdown, some of our neighbors had a different problem of economic security. You'll be surprised to know, in the Gulf, almost every day, there are enormous movements of fresh food from India to the Gulf. So when we locked down, they suddenly had a food security problem. Okay. So after the COVID, when we went, and by the way, we made an exception for them. Even though we had a lockdown, we kept the air movement of food to the Gulf going, which they appreciate very much. So if we go to the Gulf and ask them, so tell me which part of economic security is very important for you, they would have said, that period food security is very important. Now, things have become a little bit more normal. So what are we discussing today? We are looking at, critical technologies. Today there is so much talk about, that's why I come to semiconductors and chips, because in a way they are the basis of our daily lives. That here it is security because for two reasons. Without it, we are very less, we are inefficient. And we have put so much of ourselves onto those platforms that has also become part of security. So it's, I would say across the world today, what COVID has done, it has made most countries, certainly somewhat, I would say, middle and larger sized countries, very sensitive to the fact that very basic, the core issues which really matter to you, we must have some ability on our own to manage. And to my mind, what it has done is it has raised basic questions about that old model of globalization, which had begun in the 1990s and which more or less continued, you can say, till the COVID. So people would question that today. I mean, even in Europe today. Europe today, which was the most fervent advocate of globalization, is today very, very much obsessed with strategic autonomy. And for them, strategic autonomy is actually economic autonomy, in a way. So what can India and Korea do? I would say in those areas which are our strengths. If in those areas we make each other stronger and we also contribute to, because look, we are countries who our history is not a selfish history. We have always, whatever we could do for the rest of the world, we have tried to do. So if to the extent we can work together and our contribution individually and as a partnership we can do to the world, I think it would make a difference. And here, this range of new technologies, because Korea is very much regarded as a leader in many of these areas. I mean, it could be chips, it could be bio, it could be renewables, it could be nuclear. I mean, you look at everything you are good at. We look at things where we feel we are good at, where we have something, different to bring to the table. I think that to me is where I see, somebody says, okay, next 10 years, lay out a vision of our relationship. To me, those intersections, those partnerships are very much the future. So with that, I'll jump to the third question, because it's a very good example that I think what the professor was referring to was a project by this company called Micron. I think there's a Korean company called Semtech involved in the plant as well. And the answer, Professor, is that we have a scheme called production-linked incentives. So in certain designated areas, if foreign companies are making, or in fact companies, even domestic ones, are making new investment which will significantly raise national capacities, then they are entitled to incentives. So the plant, the project in question got those. Each one is approved individually. But there is a industry, I mean, we didn't make a policy for Micron. We made a policy for the sector. So if somebody else qualifies in that sector, in fact, last week, we just approved a fab, a semiconductor fab between one of our Indian companies along with a Taiwanese company. So they had a collaboration, very close, the same state where Micron is setting up a factory. And a lot of the incentives are applicable to that as well. So our hope is very much that, in terms of, this is all part of increasing manufacturing and I would say national capabilities in India, obviously because it's in our interest, but also because we think today that the world, it is very risky, dangerous for the world if production is too concentrated. If production is located in only a few geographies, however good or bad, I'm making no judgment on the geography, but it's a risk which any of us would take, that would take, which we would counter. You don't want too many assets, too much production, too much dependence on a narrow source. So that is a big lesson from the COVID, how to de-risk the global economy. And I would put that as different from what may happen in a competition between countries. That's a different dynamic. This is a common dynamic in which 200 countries of the world have a similar interest. The other question, this delicate act that you spoke about, I mean, in a way, for us, it is something we have grown up over the years doing. We were doing it more defensively before. We are doing it more confidently. So it's like, walking on a trapeze, so the trapeze was here, the trapeze is here, now the trapeze is there. But if the more you do it, in a way, the more skilled you are at it. But your point, you said, are you better off with loose alliance or are you better off with strong alliance which will enhance your global standing? I don't agree that strong alliances enhance global standing and loose alliances detract. On the contrary, I'll give you an example. Take the G20. Okay. At the beginning of our presidency of the G20, people were actually worried whether we will be able to get an agreement at the end of it all. And we had two problems. One was the Ukraine conflict and the Western countries and Russia issue. The other was a development issue, that a lot of the global south had concerns and whether the developed countries would agree to it. Now the fact that we, as I said, we have different tied to one group. I think it would have been difficult to get the 20 to actually come around. So we do see today India in many ways as playing a very useful role, as a kind of a bridging country which is able to contribute, address problems. And I think unfortunately the state of the world requires such services.
So now floor is given to MC.